Individuals make choices every day to perform what they are socialized to believe is an appropriate gender identity. Gender socialization informs how people think, act, and perceive others. Individuals are socialized to believe that masculine characteristics hold more value and are naturally superior, giving men power and control. How and what individuals eat is greatly influenced by what they are socialized to believe are appropriate gendered choices. Meat eating is a prominent case in point. Long-held viewpoints, which do not necessarily reflect historical fact, celebrate the trope of the male hunter and continue to pervade current Western ideologies of appropriate food choices for men and women. Hello, all you beautiful beings. I wanted to cover this issue while it was still trending, as it were. I've been wanting to make a video series about the topic of animal rights and masculinity for literally years, and have revisited the topic when considering how much speciesism reflects on systems of oppression and disenfranchisement within our own species. Yesterday I came across this gem from Happy Healthy Vegan.
Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. So many of you have probably seen this crazy headline floating around the news for the past several days that a sociologist said her research proves that veganism promotes and perpetuates white masculinity. Yes, veganism promotes white masculinity. The study's title, Meatless Meals and Masculinity, How Veg Men Explain Their Plant-Based Diets. The study was produced by a graduate teaching student at North Carolina State University, Mary Kate Misek. As I'll show you here, Miss Misek's study, her paper, is full of horrible assumptions about veganism in general and male vegans in particular. Let's start out with this great one here about veganism in general. She says, men effectively engage in a feminized practice, eating only plants, but masculinize it rather than feminize themselves and their consumption identities. Well, I think Ms. Misek is being completely disingenuous here. How is it a known true fact about the world that not eating dead animals is a feminine practice? I mean, males do it too, females do it. It's a decision to not eat dead animals.
You know, it's amazing. You are 100% wrong. I mean, nothing you've said has been right.
Yikes. Where to begin? Well, for one thing, Ryan neither seems to have linked to the article nor provided any actual evidence from the study itself. In fact, he only seems to know about it from the conservative news outlets on which the story has been making the rounds recently. I actually tracked down the study, partly out of curiosity as to what the drama was all about, partly to see what it actually said, but also partly because I myself will be a sociology grad student very soon, and thought seeing an example of sociological research involving a topic of interest to me might be of some value. So, is it really as sexist and horrible as Ryan makes it out to be, and as his viewers, judging by the comments, seem to think it is? Well, let's read the abstract, shall we? The relationship between eating meat and performances of masculinity has been well studied by sociologists and ecofeminists for decades. Their findings have pointed to a historical and long-standing portrayed connection between eating meat and acting like a man. However, both performances of masculinity and food consumption practices are not stagnant and change over time. Individuals must adapt to shifting social expectations of what is normal and acceptable gender and eating behavior.
You know, I'm not easily annoyed, but I never liked the way the vegetables always fell off between the sirloin on my beef kebabs. I fixed that. I don't put vegetables on my beef kebabs. In fact, I believe that's why someone invented salad.
Beef, real food for real people. I am man, hear me roar. The number's too big to ignore, and I'm way too hungry to settle for chick food. 'Cause my stomach's starting to growl, and I'm going on on the prowl for a Texas double whopper. Man, that's good. Oh, yes, I'm a guy. I'll admit I've been fed quiche. Whey tofu, bye-bye. Now it's the Whopper beef I reach. I will eat this meat till my innie turns into an outie. I am starved. I am incorrigible. And I eat the scarf of big burger, beef, bacon, jalapeno.
A burgeoning trend of alternative diets focuses on tenets such as eating local, organic, fair trade, and/or healthy foods, and is connected to ideas of personal and moral responsibility. This trend is changing what it looks like for middle and upper middle class people to eat acceptably and allows for a selective group of men to engage in alternative diets. This thesis explores a different side of the meat slash masculinity picture. Rather than focusing on the perceived connection displayed between meat and masculinity, I examined the lives of vegetarian and vegan men. By engaging in a practice that is conventionally linked to ideas about femininity, veg men have an opportunity to challenge gender expectations. So as you can see, my sect didn't base her thesis on random assumptions she plucked from the sky. She based them on gender rules associated with eating habits that have been studied for decades, including by prolific vegan authors such as Patrice Jones, Dr. Avery Harper, and Carol Adams, who actually she cites several times. And these rules can be observed in something as benign, supposedly, as TV advertising. Whether it's getting a man's man celebrity to shill for beef, or to have a tongue-in-cheek burger ad dissing chick food, quote unquote.
And to stereotype that as being feminine is just completely intellectually dishonest. Please, Miss Mizek, show me how this is some kind of known true fact about reality. Well, secondly, you go on there to say because not eating dead animals is a feminine thing, males try to overcome that by asserting their white male dominance and supremacy. Let's take a look how she pulls this out. She says that vegan men use their diet to bolster their masculinity by explaining their choice to become vegan in ways that evoke logics of rationality, science, and reason, concepts that she asserts get coded as masculine. So you're especially guilty of supporting white masculinity if your decision to go vegan has something to do with rationality, science, or logic rather than emotional. I mean, this is just so out there. I don't even know where to start. No! No!
If I may cut in again, I'd just like to point out that it's odd that Ryan accuses my sect of being intellectually dishonest, yet rather deceptively overlooked the fact that her thesis was investigating veg men in relation to traits traditionally coded as masculine. Again, he frames this like stuff the woman just pulled out of nowhere other than her own mind. She's a sociology graduate student, bro, not Davis Orini. Also, she never makes the claim anyone is guilty of anything.
First of all, I think she's being sexist in her own right by asserting that women don't come to conclusions about going vegan or anything by any means other than emotionality. Women are somehow not capable of using rational thought to arrive at conclusions. She believes that women tend to go vegan or vegetarian due to emotional reasons or personal opinion. Well, she should have factored that into her study because this is how poorly designed her study was. She just sat down and talked to 20 men who are vegan or vegetarian to see what their reasons were for becoming vegan or vegetarian. Just talked to 20 guys. That's her whole sample, her whole population out there. Well, if she wanted this study to actually have a little bit more scientific weight to it, she should have had a control group, right? A control group of a similar number of females.
Well, gee, Ryan. Almost as if that's exactly what she was trying to study. She was asking in questions to vegan and vegetarian men to examine how they talked about their eating habits that weren't in line with traditional gender roles and how they explained it. Almost as if that was the very thing she was trying to study and didn't say anything about women's roles in it at all.
And seeing if there really was that much of a significant difference between them as far as reasons for going vegan, rational and logical versus emotional. What I also found very troubling and sexist about this article was how the author aligned concepts such as science, expert opinion, and even facts with white masculinity, while she just said, the realm of the feminine is just opinion and value. And an example of this she pulled out was Hector, who said he went vegan because he read a book that made a lot of sense to him. It's written by this guy who was a molecular biologist, and what he said made a lot of sense. And according to this author, Hector is a classic displayer of white masculinity because he listened to someone who knew a lot about a certain subject and followed this guy's opinion. Alright, so
rather than going on another mini rant, because that's not really going to get us anywhere, I'm going to quote this section of My Sex study. It's from the literature review section of it. Certain performance elements through socialization become associated with one gender or the other, resulting in binaries that restrict suitable behavior for both men and women. Binary thinking results in the objectification and domination of the subordinate half of the binary. Thus, as Patricia Hill Collins writes, whites rule blacks, men dominate women, reason is thought superior to emotion in ascertaining truth, facts supersede emotion in evaluating knowledge, and subjects rule objects. It is important to understand, then, how vegemen explain and justify their practices, because they engage in practices that often have gender-coded meanings. And actually, stories of Hector and the other gentlemen who were interviewed for the study, they're pretty interesting. I will link the article below so you can read it. It's a PDF document, and because it's a sociological study, it is pretty lengthy. What I will say is, again, what Ryan misses is that the reason MySec is associating men with reason with whiteness, which is what the next thing he's going to bring up, is that she's investigating these binaries that we're socialized to think in and how they impact the way veg men present themselves in society, basically.
So far, all the author's been focused on is the masculinity part of white masculinity. So where in the world does white masculinity come out of? She says that she frames veganism as a privilege for the elite, explaining that it symbolizes for men a form of cultural capital and a symbolic resource, a way to align oneself with those who have the privilege of choice when it comes to food decisions. So I guess this is where she's pulling the white part out of this white masculinity. Only white people have the power and privilege to make decisions when it comes to food choices. And again, I just find this complete rubbish. I mean, is she assuming that vegan diets are more expensive and therefore only people with a certain amount of economic power have the ability to make food choices? This is complete nonsense. As we say time and time again on the show, there is no cheaper diet out there than whole food plants. Can you tell me what costs less per calorie to eat than legumes, potatoes, rice, bananas?
Again, sweetie, this is why we read the article before we get our panties in a twist over it. On page 23 of her study, Mysick writes, My participants explain their choice to become veg using scientific research and rationality, but these practices are also highly classed. In other parts of our conversations, many more clearly display their class positions as a component of their overall identities. The participants are not just men, or just middle class, or just predominantly white, or mostly heterosexual, but all of the above. Their identities interlay in different ways. All of my study participants fall roughly into a middle or upper middle class category. The value of different forms of cultural capital continuously changes based on the individual's valuations of them. Whereas in the past, during war times, meat was a scarcity and symbolized high culture, its ready availability means it is no longer a high status item. The significance placed on different foods changes as their material and symbolic power changes. Knowledge about these certain foods can signify an individual's class position. So, okay, that's a little bit about what her study said, and meat as a bit of a status symbol more generally. But she continues. Current middle and upper middle class ideas about food include eating food that is healthy, sustainable, organic, GMO-free, and ethical. Eating and talking about these foods has become a way to obtain cultural capital. The alternative food movement, though not entirely comprised of veggies, emphasizes eating foods that are outside the conventional industrial food system, foods that are sustainable, local, healthy, and/or organic. Okay, so she mentions that the documentary Forks Over Knives came up a lot throughout her interviews, and that just about all of her participants have high levels of education, which are connected to class status. She goes on, during the interviews, the men explain that they focus on buying and eating food that first and foremost does not contain meat. However, their dietary preferences go far beyond this. Many of my participants told me they do not eat fast food and rarely eat any prepackaged or pre-prepared food at all. Eating food that is organic, sustainable, non-GMO, and healthy is a priority. Some cite all of these food categorizations as important, while others emphasize only one or two. These foods are usually more expensive than conventional foods. They also emphasize the variety of food they eat, including ethnically diverse foods, which add to their culinary and cultural capital. So clearly what MySec is saying is not that it's only white men of a certain social class who can be vegan or have the privilege of being vegan. After all, I'm vegan, and I clearly don't eat the same way as these men that she's interviewed. I tend to eat the same things most of the time. But there's no denying that there is certain virtue that's assigned to eating a certain way, eating locally, eating organically, eating non-GMO, eating limited processed food. I mean, Ryan, you of all people should know that, since I hear you and your wife talking about it in almost every single video you make. So. And clearly you don't need to eat fully organic, local, non-GMO to be vegan. But what MySig is discussing is like the certain cultural capital these gentlemen have because they eat the way they eat the way they do, and sometimes veganism gets aligned with that. Even though veganism is not just about diet, it certainly doesn't help that that's the way it's often pushed, including by some very prominent YouTuber.
And people from all over the world, of all different economic backgrounds, have the ability to choose those foods just as much as they have the ability to choose more expensive meats and fast food. So again, this thing about it being veganism a white privileged diet is complete nonsense.
Which again is why it's a good thing she never makes the argument that it is.
You know, just reading all this stuff from this author really got me thinking as to my reasons for going vegan. And if they were purely logical and therefore perpetuating white masculinity, I'm not even fully white, if you guys may have noticed, or were my decisions more emotional and feminine? You guys tell me down below, what do you think? Because you guys have probably heard me talk about this before. It all started when I went on vacation one time for about a week in San Francisco, and I chose to make all my meals vegan at home, and when I went out to restaurants, I got all vegan options there as well. So at the end of the week, it dawned on me, like, wow, not only do I feel great and full of energy, but no animals had to die in order for me to live. No, nothing had to be killed in order for me to live. And that had a great emotional impact on me. So there was this emotional component where I had empathy and compassion for animals and nothing had to die. Yet I came to this rational conclusion, it seemed like, oh, I'm gonna go vegan because of that emotional feeling. So it just shows you how I think it's just kind of artificial for this author to categorize people's decisions to go vegan as binary, just all emotional or all logical, when these are complicated decisions and it's really not so black and white.
I mean, I keep repeating myself. He clearly didn't read the article, or he just doesn't understand what it was about, because, again, MySec is not just is projecting all these binaries onto her interviewees or all veg men in general. It's like, if you actually read the study itself, you would know that. It's just, it's not that hard. And yes, I'd imagine that most vegan stories is regardless of their gender, are based on a little mix of logic and emotion, because you know, people have both, because, you know, it's not a binary. And I don't think she ever tried to make the point that the binary was true or anything like that. God, I have a headache.
If it's a purely logical or purely emotional decision. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. And is this video of mine in itself just an example of white masculinity, since I'm trying to prove a female wrong? Let me know what you think down below. If you got something out of this video, hit like and share.
I don't want to come off like I'm accusing you of anything or calling you names, but you do seem a little pathologically fragile when it comes to women who come from academic backgrounds insinuating that you're wrong about things, or like questioning your assumptions about things. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say.
Share it if you've seen someone try to share this study with you. So until next time, guys, keep it carb, baby, keep it carb.